To tell us more, our Environment Editor Valerie Dekimpe is with me. And Valerie, first of all, just tell us a bit more then about those measures unveiled by the President.
Right. So just as the government had unveiled an energy sobriety plan, or now it's all about water sobriety. And so that's what this water management plan really is about. How can France reduce water consumption and use limited resources more efficiently in order to save those very precious water resources? And so climate change featured quite prominently in Emmanuel Macron's speech earlier today in the Alps. He cited IPCC models saying how the country will see a rainfall dropping by at least 15% in the next few years. Also, groundwater levels will plunge by about 10 or 15% in France. And so that is what France needs to be preparing for in the future. Essentially repeating, though, what scientists have been saying all along is that things will get worse and worse in the future. So he unveiled a series of 50 measures, but we are looking at three major pillars in the strategy for France in order to reduce its water consumption. Let's take a listen, perhaps, to what Emmanuel Macron had to say.
This water management plan, which includes 50 measures, is above all about restraint and using water more efficiently in the future. I would like to set ourselves an objective for 2030 to reduce our water consumption by 10% in all sectors of the economy. This will require modernizing water management policies and integrating the notion of limited resources and climate change into our policies.
So we heard Emmanuel Macron there unveiling one of the major pillars of his strategy, and that is reducing water consumption by 10% by 2030. But in order to do that, of course, what exactly can the country do? And that's when we look at two major plans that he talked about, and that one of them is limiting leaks. So modernizing France's water systems. He talked about investing more than 180 million euros every single year in order to limit leakage from water systems. And so the government actually has identified more than 170 so-called hotspots where municipalities are losing more than 50% of water, of clean drinking water, lost essentially because of old pipes and old systems that have not been renovated. The second pillar, perhaps, of how France can actually get there is reusing wastewater, recycling and reusing water from toilets, from rainwater, from everything that comes out of our homes, essentially. And so in France, less than 2% of wastewater from homes, toilets, washing machines are being repurposed for agriculture, one of the sectors that uses water the most here in France. At least 50% of French freshwater reserves go into the farming sector. Emmanuel Macron said that France needed to look to other countries like Spain and Israel, for example, where more than 85% of wastewater is being recycled and repurposed in the case of Israel, for example. And so the overarching objective in terms of wastewater will be to bring the level of wastewater reuse from 1% at the moment to 10% by 2030.
And so these are all really tangible ideas that the government has to try and tackle the problem of drought. Just how serious, though, is this issue?
Well, France has seen its driest winter on record. We are currently experiencing a drought in the middle, well, now the end of winter. But let me show you a map, perhaps, of groundwater levels in France to give you a sense of how dire the situation really is. So all the areas in yellow, in orange, and red are areas where groundwater levels are moderately low, low, or very low. And so this is a very worrying trend, considering that the aquifer replenishes during the winter ahead of summer. And so as of March 1st, 80% of groundwater levels are below normal levels. And so this is what the situation looks like now in France. And it's not the first time the country has had to go through a dry spell. We've seen it before in 2012, in 2017. But what's really new and unheard of for many scientists is the fact that the entire country now is facing water shortages. According to France's National Meteorological Agency, February ranked as the driest month on record since 1959. The country has also shattered other records mentioned by Emmanuel Macron, for example, more than 32 consecutive days without significant rainfall. And so that is the scientific reality, the numbers that we have. But there's also the political context in which this is happening. We have seen over the past year protests west of the country in regions where water reservoirs are being built for farmers to water their crops. And this has been very controversial for activists who say that essentially this is just a water grab. And so you see not just how the numbers tell you the story of how there's going to be more drought, more intense drought, but also how this is becoming a source of tension in the country.
Valerie Dekimpe, our Environment Editor. Thanks very much indeed.